I call for the Faith Action Leadership Team report, and we will continue momentarily with that. So I invite you to the top table. But before we continue with that, there are two international speakers who have asked to speak and were not able to be heard yesterday. So I invite Reverend Jonathan Torino from the Waldensian Church in Italy to address the assembly. He's right there.
Dear moderator, dear assembly, I am most thankful to be here today to represent the Waldensian Church in Italy. I am a minister of two very small congregations. And our church this year celebrates the 850th anniversary of her existence, not only in Italy, but also in Central Europe. And it is a time for us to explore our pre-Reformation roots and to appreciate the meaning of a poor church, serving the poor, the meaning of a church that is itinerant and not established, a church that caters for the future and not for the past. And we are challenged by the paradox that on the one hand, our churches are declining in number, increasing in age, and at the same time, our service, our Diaconia Valdese, is growing, developing, facing new challenges, thanks to the tax rebuff of the 8 per thousand that is given by Italian taxpayers. And services are challenging, from migrants that are helped and situated in new constructive situations, to the elderly, the young people. And of course, these funds are devolved towards the needs of our country, but also needs in the world. And I hope that your church will benefit from our 8 per mille. It is time that as a church in Italy, we think of giving back what we have received. And we have received a lot from your church. We share a common history, a history of witness, a challenge. But as you know, we are a very strong minority, very outspoken. And we don't have the resources that the main dominant church has always had. We don't have access to schools, very difficult to have access to prisons. Of course, we are allowed into prison, but it is difficult to have a ministry, a chaplaincy ministry. So we are relegated to the margins unless we find new challenges and new ways of expressing ourselves creatively. And this happens through associations, cultural units, circles, by interacting with Italian politics, by being an alternative voice in the field of ethics, in the field of culture, where we can offer a different way of being Christians. We are not the only Christians, but we have a different way of living out our church life and our faith. I would like to thank you for this opportunity. I'm very grateful for this time. And I also bring the greetings of the Tavola Valdese and of the churches that have commissioned me to come.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And it was an inspiration visiting you in November. I now call on the Reverend Dr. Mawawi Chilongozi, General Secretary of the General Synod in Malawi.
Moderator and the whole assembly, I would like to inform this assembly that the Church of Central Africa Presbyterian will celebrate 100 years of its existence this year. The CCP was established in 1924 as the result of the work of the Scottish missionaries from the 1800s, and now they formed a united church, the Church of Central Africa Presbyterian. So we are planning to have grand celebrations in August from the 23rd to 25th August, and we have invited our partner churches, the Presbyterian Church in Canada, Presbyterian Church in Ireland, Presbyterian Church in Nigeria, Ghana, and other Presbyterian churches, and also the Church of Scotland, who is our mother church. The moderator, the Right Reverend Dr. Shaw Patson and his wife, will be accompanied by Carlo Finray, and they will come for the celebrations. On the 23rd of August, we will have a book launch, which will be presided by the moderator of the General Assembly of the Church of Scotland. This book has been written by scholars in Malawi and reflecting on the 100 years of CCP in Malawi. Malawi is what it is today because of the work of the Scottish missionaries to Central Africa. So we are so grateful for the connections that is there from the 1800s up to now. And we are so thankful that the moderator will attend the celebrations. The title of the book that will be launched is The Church of Central Africa Presbyterian, a Centenary Assessment. And this book was edited by our own Professor Kenneth Ross and myself. Moderator, thank you so much for giving us this time, and we wish you well. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you. Yep. We move now to section 10, as in the print. Wait. And we've got two people who would like to speak. So I don't see any questions, but I do see two comments. So I would ask Joanne Bella and then Dr. Grant Barkley. Joanne's online. Thank you. Joanne. Oh, you're here. Wonderful.
Thank you, moderator. Joanne Belle, 605. I just wanted to make a small comment about the whole Palestinian issue. As a young Christian Palestinian, we are a minority compared to the other communities in the Middle East. So my whole life, we have always looked out for each other as a community together. And as a young Palestinian, I've never been to Palestine, and it's hard for us Arabs to go there, which is really unfortunate since I am a Palestinian and I should be able to be given the opportunity to go to my country. The chances of me to be able to go see the land that I spent my whole childhood hearing all kinds of magical stories about from my ancestors and my grandma, where she lived and spent her entire childhood, and then was forced to leave in 1948 during the Nakba, are very slim, which honestly breaks our hearts because this is the case to many Palestinians at the moment living in Jordan, us too and my family. And to think that if my grandma hasn't been forced to leave everything behind and come to Jordan at the time, we would still be living there, which also a lot of us still have a lot of family members still living there. And I speak on behalf of all the Jordanians. Palestine is a land that we only know from stories, photos, videos, and most importantly, stories from our ancestors, which we spent years hearing about. So despite that we have so much loyalty for the land of Palestine, I cannot even start to imagine what the Palestinians who are currently living there feel. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you very much. Dr. Barclay.
Moderator Grant Barclay 163. This section encourages us to share the voices of Palestinian Christians, and so I would like to take just a moment to share a similar voice, if I may. It has recently come to my attention that the Latinatas, the Catholic Patriarch, Cardinal Pier Battista Pizzaballa, has just visited Gaza in these past few days. He took with him the parish priest, Father Gabriel, who has not been able to return to Gaza since October the 7th. That's the Father Gabriel whom I heard speak in Glasgow last month, and I referred to that on Saturday. The Patriarch writes, "I entered Gaza during the week of Pentecost. I was among my people who are currently enduring much suffering from the war and the destruction it has left. I brought with me the promise of that new life, and I was very surprised that they were the ones who taught me a lesson I will never forget. Their steadfast faith, carried with heartwarming smiles, left a mark on me and my life." He writes, "I saw hope and optimism in their eyes. They told me, we will stay here. As long as the church stands with us, we are not afraid." I was really impressed by their attitude. He goes on to observe, "The scale of the destruction I witnessed is unbelievable, and the poor living conditions, such as the lack of water and electricity and the absence of security, are dire. The sound of bombing is frequent. It's felt at every moment. I also visited the cemetery where I blessed the graves of the faithful departed, especially the martyrs Nahida and Samar, who were killed by a sniper near the monastery. At the end of my visit, I celebrated the Feast of Pentecost with the parish of Gaza. I urged them, with the power of the Holy Spirit, to keep the flame of hope alive in their hearts and lives, and assured them that, as a church, we will not abandon them and will be among the first to help rebuild Gaza and assist its people in achieving a dignified life." He concludes by saying, "I want to send a clear message to decision makers. Enough killing. The war must end, and avenues for various aid must be opened to avoid an imminent humanitarian crisis. I hope this nightmare ends quickly." Thank you, moderator.
Thank you, Dr. Barclay. I see no more requests to speak, but I'm going to take a second to make sure of that in case the computer has missed anything. And I realize we are pressed for time, but I don't want to just move past this. So can we just take a second to be in silence and pay attention to what we've just, or what we're about to agree? Every voice, every cry, every whisper, every thought is a prayer. So amen. Section 10 as in the print. Thank you. And online? Thank you. And this is a new section 11. There's a new section 11 in the name of Ian Alexander. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Thank you, moderator. This, a new section 11, is encourage anyone who is in future planning a pilgrimage to Israel and Palestine to seek out and meet with the contemporary Christian community and their Muslim and Jewish neighbours who seek justice and peace, listening to their concerns and experiences, and offering accompaniment and solidarity with those suffering under occupation and discrimination.
Thank you, Principal Clark. Mr. Alexander. Reverend
Alexander.
Dr. Alexander.
Oh,
Pardon
thank you.
me.
Alexander 1. Moderator, evidence from people who have been on justice pilgrimages show that these opportunities and experiences that the pilgrims get mean that they become more specific in their prayers, they become more active in their witness, and they become more knowledgeable in their advocacy for justice and peace on their return home, because they have a much clearer understanding of the realities on the ground of what it means to live under occupation and discrimination. One pilgrim wrote, "It was one of those moments that I realized I can't do much to change the situation, but I can be there to share the pain." Accompaniment, moderator, is what justice pilgrimages is about. A modern pilgrimage in the footsteps of Jesus must mean meeting the contemporary followers of Jesus in the land of Christ's birth, as well as their Jewish and Muslim neighbours. And it must be more than seeing just the historic sites. And those of us who are staff in the church officers, our ministers on the ground in Jerusalem and Tiberias, can help you to identify the people and the organisations who will help you get a broader perspective on what it's like to be a contemporary Christian in the land where Jesus lived. The Anglican theologian Claire Amos wrote, "Today, perhaps the physical stones may be mute, but the living stones cry out with increasingly deeper frustration. The incarnation, the infleshing of Christ means that such cries need to be heard." Moderator, I ask the Assembly to hear these cries, to encourage the whole Church to take an opportunity to listen to the voices of the people of Christ, the land of Christ's birth, and encourage all pilgrims to try to make sure to meet the living stones when visiting the land of the Holy One. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Alexander. I don't see any questions or comments. I would ask the convener to reply.
Moderator McNeil 454, I'd like to invite our Vice Convener, Alistair Cumming, who had a visit to Israel, to speak. Thank you.
Moderator Alistair Cumming 459, Vice Convener of FAPLT and leader of the R&P project group. In October of this year, of last year, the R&P group were very fortunate to go and visit Israel. And that was visiting, as Ian Alexander has said, to all parties in Israel we met with. And I can confer that that was definitely a very moving experience. That changed attitudes. It changed what we were thinking. It gave us an appreciation of some of the struggles which we were able to see there. The R&P group left Israel on the 6th of October. We cannot imagine what it's like now for those people that we saw in Israel, in the West Bank and Palestine, living under the occupation and now living under bombs and bullets. Thank you.
Thank you. Convener.
Moderator McNeil 454, we're happy to accept.
Thank you. And is the Assembly happy to accept? Okay, thank you. And online, thank you. So we move to section 11 as in the print? No, we don't. There's another new 11, okay? Okay. We have another new section 11 in the name of Alan Gordon. I will ask the Principal Clerk to read it, please.
Thank you, Moderator. The new Section 11 is encourage church members to take note of the request from the Palestinian Christian communities for help in their non-violent struggle to bring peace with justice, including consideration of previous General Assembly statements to refrain from buying goods from illegal settlements.
I call on Alan Gordon to speak to this.
Alan Gordon, 31.
Thank you.
Learn, pray, act. We've certainly been learning about what's been going on in Israel-Palestine. We've certainly been praying about it. But act, if not now, when? For 15 years, Palestinian Christians have been calling through a variety of documents, including the Kairos Palestinian document and a cry for hope, for the churches to stand against the injustices they're experiencing, living mainly in Palestine and Israel. They have appealed to us repeatedly as brothers and sisters in Christ to support them in many ways, including not using the Bible to legitimize Zionism or to legitimize the dispossession of their lands. And it calls us to stop purchasing goods produced in the illegal Israeli settlements, among other things. Many church members have said about the ongoing Palestinian conflict, but what can we do? And it seems that this non-violent action on our behalf may, as happened in South Africa, force the State of Israel to return to serious negotiations about working for peace with justice for all in Palestine and Israel. I fully appreciate that when we do our supermarket shopping, it takes extra seconds to read the label country of origin so that we don't buy goods from illegal settlements. But it's easy to do so. I picked up a packet of potatoes some months ago, selected, and it's only then you notice produce of Israel, or avocado pears, produce of Israel. This simple action is part of what our brothers and sisters in Palestine are asking from us. Moderator, I move the deliverance.
And do we have a seconder? Thank you. Again, I don't see any questions on the screen, but I want to hold on in case I'm incorrect. Okay, thank
you. OT 102. I wasn't planning to speak, but I'm absolutely totally in support of this, and I don't try my best not to buy Israeli goods myself. This has come up before at previous General Assemblies, and the minister in Jerusalem asked us not to pass it because of problems it would give the Church of Scotland staff working in Jerusalem and in Tiberias. And I don't know if there's somebody at the Assembly who knows more about that than me, but I just think we need to be careful, because I do remember us being asked not to approve of this at a previous Assembly because of that. And I don't know if anyone here can help. Well, maybe Ian Alexander can help in this matter.
I was going to say, and thank you, I would, so that's a question.
Yeah.
Ian, is that all right if Ian?
Yep, Alexander 1. I think what Val is referring to is the boycott, divestment, sanctions part. We did in the General Assembly pass this bit about the illegal settlements, because the whole of the European Union has legislation against buying things out of the illegal settlements. So that's different from the BDS, which I think is what you're referring to, Val.
Thank you, and thank you for your question. Any other questions? Any comments? Then I call on the convener.
Moderator McNeil 454, we're happy to receive this new section, and just with the awareness that this ultimately is down to personal choice, but we are pleased to accept this new section.
Thank you very much. The convener accepts. Is the Assembly happy to accept? Thank you very much. And online? The new Section 11 passes. And now we move to Section 11 in the print. Section 11 in the print? Okay, we've got several questions. Great. So, question from Rory McLeod.
MacLeod, Keith Hun Shach, MacLeod 417. Thank you, moderator. The original section 11 invites us to pray and also reaffirms the 2015 General Assembly urging of the UK government to call for the immediate recognition of a Palestinian state alongside the State of Israel. And if that is indeed what our partners on the ground are calling for, then that should be what we are calling and praying for. However, I'm hearing increasingly frequently voices expressing doubt that this is ever likely to come about. At the same time, also aware of courageous pursuers of reconciliation within Israel-Palestine, seeking for dialogue between Jewish and Arab citizens in pursuit of a state of Israel in which all citizens are equal. That too carries with it a lot of doubt and perhaps even cynicism. However, I'm just wondering what the Faith Action Programme consider to be the appropriate response for those of us who want to be good neighbours to all of our local partners on the ground. And I have discussed the matter with some of the programme team, and so I wonder if they can confirm what we should indeed be praying and calling for in these vexed times. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Convener?
Moderator Alistair Cumming, 459. We are in touch with our partners and others who are clearly looking at different options and other options. We ask you to pray for our partners. We ask you to pray for the Christian community that we're in partnership with, who would still support a Palestinian state. We ask you to pray for Tabitha School, where we work across all faiths. We ask you to pray that we all may listen and learn constantly. And we ask you to pray that we would find the need to explore. And we ask you to pray for people of all faiths.
Thank you, Convener. I have 3 names on the screen for comment. I would gently remind folk that going back to questions, to try to be very succinct if you need to have a preamble, ideally to have a question mark at the end of the first sentence. But we have 3 comments. First, Gemma King, Paul Middleton, then Ursula Glinecki.
Moderator, Gemma King, 36. I'm speaking in my capacity as a Church of Scotland trustee of Churches Together in Britain and Ireland. I wish to commend the call of FAPOLT for the whole of the Church of Scotland to pray for peace in Israel-Palestine and highlight the collection of prayer resources collated by CTBI and written by member churches throughout Britain and Ireland. I also want to commend the CTBI reflection resource, Torn in Two, Responding to the Israel-Palestine Conflict, an ecumenical resource for discussion and reflection, which was written by the Interfaith Theological Advisory Group of CTBI to enable reflection and prayer. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Moderator. Middleton, 461. A lot of what I might have said was said very eloquently by Maureen Jack and Stuart Gillen. I think it was yesterday. So I just want to say two things. First of all, the importance of words in these difficult times. We know that the situation in the Middle East has repercussions around the world, and that there is genuine distress, particularly amongst our Jewish friends and our Muslim friends as well. And we should just be mindful that a church that has sometimes misstepped, indeed a faith that has often perpetuated anti-Semitism, needs to be careful. Nonetheless, that should not silence us from calling out against injustice and atrocity, both in terms of the Hamas attack and also what can only be described as disproportionate response. And I want to commend FAPL for, I think, in the report, getting it just right. The second thing I'd like to say is that we shouldn't forget, in the midst of Gaza, the West Bank. I was there in 2003, actually. Ian Alexander helped me to go when I was a young theologian. And even then, there was much in the way of land grab and land confiscation. Channel 4 News has quite helpfully a few times drawn attention to the way the police routinely brutalize and shoot and treat the Palestinians living there, where Hamas is not a force. So we shouldn't take that off of our minds. And remember that really there is no way forward other than to recognize that Palestinians and Israelis have to live together in the borders that the United Nations have set. I was pleased and surprised that David Cameron, the Foreign Secretary, did speak of some of these settlers with their ideology of a greater Israel beyond those boundaries as extremists. And they are, and we need to challenge that extremism and theology where it happens. But really, there is no prospect for peace without recognizing, as FAPL calls for, the establishment of two states within agreed borders with the right to live in harmony and peace. Thank you.
Thank you. And Ursula Glenecki.
Thank you, moderator. Thank you, General Assembly. Glenecki number 6. I would like to ask for prayers for our students of the University of Edinburgh. People might not be aware, but they are students on strike right now at the old college just around the corner here. And several of them have been on hunger strike. It's now more than second week, so please pray for them. They are Palestinian, they are Jewish, they are of other faiths and none, and they are there together. So please pray for them. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Section 11. Okay. There's a new section 12. We have a new section 12 in the name of Callum Martin.
I'll read it, moderator.
Principal Clark.
Thank you. This is a new section 12. We've got 3. So this is Callum Martin's. Note the monthly prayers for peace in the Middle East being held online on the 24th of each month, jointly with Christian Aid Scotland since the latter part of 2023, as an opportunity to join in such prayers together with Christians and Christian Aid partners in the Middle East and express thanks for those involved.
Thank you, Principal Clark. Callum.
Thank you, moderator. Callum Martin 039. I'd just like to start by thanking the committee for bringing this report and within it the call to pray together for peace and justice in the Middle East. I'd like to thank as well everyone who's contributed to those prayers and to this conversation. And as we pray individually, collectively, as congregations or as presbyteries, it seems constructive here at our National General Assembly to note, celebrate and share that the Kirk has already been involved creating spaces jointly with Christian Aid Scotland to pray together, nationwide, ecumenically, with Christians and with Christian Aid partners in the Middle East, every month on the 24th since the latter part of 2023. and really just to recognize the role that the folk from the Middle East themselves have been playing in these, to hear those voices as we pray together. This Friday, for example, the 24th, we'll be joined in prayer by May from the Young Women's Christian Association in Jerusalem. Similarly, in June, the Church of Scotland is working closely with Christian Aid for a screening of the Tinderbox. If folk are not aware of that, it's a very powerful, very engaging and very moving film on this subject, and I really commend the work that's gone into those prayer meetings and into arranging that screening. And just to say then, and I'll keep this brief, but just to say, as we look to encourage one another here in prayer, it seems apposite to note that these are ongoing and that the Kirk has made so much breadth of scope nationwide to make spaces for this possible. I'd like then to ask Assembly to note this opportunity for us to pray together and ask us to thank those in the Middle East who have taken the time to pray with us at these occasions as we seek in turn to pray together with them for peace. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see anything on the screen, and in the interest of time, can I ask the convener if you're happy to accept? The convener is happy to... Of course you can. Questions are always in order.
Murdoch 148, last time I looked. Can you please give us the resources? I'm on the Christian Aid website at the moment and I can't find them. Thank you. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Is it on the web page?
Moderator McNeil 454, if it's not on our website, it will be by tomorrow. And can I just enthusiastically accept this new section? And a helpful reminder, we're in 2024, so just remember the 24th of every month to pray. Thank you.
Thank you
Christian
very
Aid
much.
Scotland, sorry, website.
It's on the Christian Aid Scotland website. Christian Aid Scotland website. It might be, you might be looking on the Christian Aid website. Anyway, we'll move on. We'll find it. It's duly noted and it'll be sorted. Is the Assembly happy to accept? Wonderful. And another new section 12 and online. Just whack me. Okay. It's a new section 12 in the name of Alan Gordon. I would ask Alan to speak to this. Thank you.
I'll read it first.
Oh, sorry.
Saves it, because it
Saves it,
time.
yep.
So new section in the name of Alan Gordon, call on the Faith Action Programme leadership team to publicly and explicitly call on the UK government to call for an immediate and permanent ceasefire in Gaza, to cease granting export licences for the sale of armaments, you know that word, to Israel, and to reinstate UNRWA funding immediately.
Thank you.
Alan Gordon, 31. Moderator, we all know about the horrific attacks by Hamas on October the 7th and the subsequent Israeli attacks on Gaza, which have certainly resulted in at least 35,000 Palestinian deaths, 77% of whom are in fact innocent women, and there are over 14,500 children being killed, and the destruction of almost 70% of their homes. Israel has now begun its fighting in Rafah, and Haaretz, the Israeli newspaper, just in the last few days, is reporting that the Israeli Defense Force is assessing that fighting in Gaza will last at least another 6 months, which is why I'm calling again, although the moderator, you already have done this, but publicly and explicitly to repeat our call for an immediate ceasefire. The second point, the International Court of Justice across Israel has accused Israel of serious violations of international humanitarian law. Such law emphatically excludes the disproportionate and indiscriminate bombardment of civilian populations and civilian infrastructure, such as homes, hospitals, mosques, churches, schools, and universities. There are 12 universities in Gaza, and they've all been destroyed. British-made armaments are being used by the Israeli Defense Forces. This has to cease. And finally, For millions of Palestinians, the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which is referred to as UNRWA, delivers life-saving humanitarian aid, food aid, healthcare, social services, and other critical services. UNRWA is the largest organisation providing humanitarian aid to Palestinians. It has 30,000 employees. Israel called for a suspension of funds to UNRWA, claiming it supported terrorism, but an independent review set up by the Secretary General of the United Nations has recently confirmed Israel's allegations to be baseless and without foundations. The Secretary General has appealed for the restoration of funding to allow the 2 million people living in Gaza to receive humanitarian aid from UNRWA. Norway and Germany have resumed funding, and it is time the UK ended its freeze on donations. Moderator, I move the deliverance.
Thank you. And do we have a seconder? Yes. Thank you. I'm slipping. It's getting late, so apologies. We have no questions, but Ian Alexander is asking for a comment. You're withdrawing it. That's quite all right. Seeing no comments and no questions. Oh, okay.
Sarl 236, just 2 small comments. We're now in a general election period. Let us put pressure on our government to do something, to follow what's been done this morning in Spain, Norway, and Ireland, and recognise the 2-state solution. Secondly, could we put some pressure on the government to do the same sort of almost immediate reaction as happened in the aftermath of the Dunblane massacre, in which guns were outlawed because so many children had died. We're talking about thousands in Gaza being killed, potentially by weapons sold from Britain. That is awful. Sorry. Thank you, moderator.
Thank you. Is that I'm going to let the principal clerk speak to that.
Thank you very much, Andrew. Just to remind people why we don't yet know the date of the general election. We do. It is definitely right. I'm not. 4th of July.
Yes.
Thank you very much for
Martin
that.
Fair's anniversary.
So happy anniversary. We'll all send him a card. But just to bear in mind that, of course, we are then going into election season. So we have to be very, very careful. And that could we could actually make us less effective if we don't take care in how we do this. So I think I just want to, and I haven't got to my fingertips the actual, all the rules about political statements during the election season, but we could be quite quickly nearing into that. So I just wanted to make the Assembly aware.
Thank you for that. Again, I see no calls for comments. I want to make sure before I see someone at the podium I don't have notice. Is this the next section? Okay, then we'll wait. Convener.
Moderator McNeil 454, we're happy to accept the new section.
Okay, convener's happy to accept. Is the Assembly happy to accept? Thank you. And online? Okay. And we have another section 12 in the name of Maureen Jack. I'll ask the principal clerk to read it.
Thank you, moderator. In the name of Maureen Jack, express our gratitude to Britain yearly meeting for its liberality in funding the ecumenical accompaniment programme in Palestine and Israel, EAPPI, UK and Ireland, and instruct the Faith Action Programme leadership team to give prayerful consideration to reinstating the annual Church of Scotland grant to support the work of EAPPI UK and Ireland, and at least to its previous level, and to report back to the General Assembly of 2025.
Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator. Maureen Jack, 288.
And do we have a seconder?
Yes, I do,
Thank
Jenny
you.
Adams. I declare an interest. I've served as an ecumenical accompanier and for 6 years represented the Church of Scotland on the UK and Ireland management group of the EAPPI programme in Israel and in Palestine and Israel. EAPPI was established following a call at Easter 2002 from the heads of churches in Jerusalem for the presence in the country of a group of international observers. A number of Church of Scotland folk have served as ecumenical accompaniers, ministers, members, elders, and members of staff. Placed in the occupied West Bank, accompaniers monitor human rights abuses. Placed in the occupied West Bank, accompaniers provide a protective presence to threatened communities and monitor human rights abuses, reporting to the UN and other agencies. They stand in solidarity with local churches and Israelis and Palestinians working for a just peace. Despite the difficulties, EAPPI currently has teams in Bethlehem, Jericho, and East Jerusalem. As Professor Middleton suggested, their presence there is needed now more than ever. The UK and Ireland programme is ministered by the Quakers on behalf of almost 20 partners, including the Church of Scotland. Each year, the programme is in significant deficit. In the last 2 years, the deficit has been over £200,000 a year. This year is projected to be over 300,000. Each year, the Quakers simply look at the deficit and transfer an equivalent amount from their own unrestricted reserves to cover it. Over the last 2 years, the best part of £500,000 from a denomination a fraction the size of ours. Moderator, for 10 years or so now, the Church of Scotland has given a grant of £15,000 a year to support the programme. But this year, along with other cuts, this grant has been withdrawn and we have given nothing. I invite commissioners to support this motion. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no questions, but I do have 3 comments. So we'll take these 3, Susan Mitchell, Stuart Gillen, and Mary Woodward. And I would remind folk that we are under the quash, so to be as succinct as you possibly can without in any way shutting down this discussion.
Thank you, Moderator. I can simplify things because I am representing Susan Mitchell.
Wonderful.
Who is Assistant Clerk to Scotland, to General Meeting for Scotland. So thank you very much for having me here. I'm delighted to be here. I love it. I find some of it mystifying, but I still love being here. And what I'm going to say is Susan's words rather than mine, mostly. So I would like to thank Maureen Jack for acknowledging the role that Quakers have played in what we call EAPI since its inception. As she said, Quakers administer this on behalf of churches together in Britain and Ireland, with representatives from other churches participating in the committee and volunteers coming from many different churches and faiths. EAPI engages with the occupation because it has been invited to, as Maureen said. In 2002, local Christians in the Holy Land proposed establishing EAPI as an accompaniment programme including an international ecumenical presence closely linked to the local churches, an international civil society presence to witness and accompany all those suffering in Palestine and Israel, and to support efforts to end the occupation. Given the current situation in Gaza and the West Bank, and with the occupation now in its 5th decade, the call by churches and local partners for EAPI to engage in this mission is stronger than ever. Neither Susan nor I have had personal experience of being an ecumenical accompanier, but my good friend Bronwyn has. And listening to her and all the other accompaniers who come back, and part of their job is to walk around telling everybody what they've seen. Just to stand there and be a witness is so powerful and so necessary. So I can testify to its value, as Ms. Jack has. In line with our peace testimony, Britain Yearly Meeting, that's Quakers in mainland Britain, funds the staffing for the administration of EAPI, including servicing the accompanies. Quakers have committed since the beginning of the programme, as Maureen said, to always fill any shortfall in funding through our unrestricted income. We can say that Quakers in recent years have funded between 50 to 75% of the programme annually, and is the largest funder of the programme by a significant amount. The other funders are a mix of some official partners, including, until this year, the Church of Scotland, and some other, generally small, grant-giving bodies. Once again, I thank Maureen and support her request that the Church of Scotland reinstate the grant. Thank you for listening.
Thank you. And could we ask officially for your name and number? That's quite all right.
It's on my label, Mary Woodward, 489.
Thank you, Mary. Stuart Gillen.
Thank you, moderator. The Church of Scotland is invited to the handover ceremonies, one group to the next group. The first one I went to, Muriel and I, 86 to 87. And they were told that they had set a new record. It was 4 groups at the time, or 3 now, which is better than the 1 that was the way back initially. What was the new record? They had surpassed the number of incident reports, submissions from the previous group by about 200. And at each handover, 3-month by 3-month period, the number of incident reports, that is their writing, recording, their witnessing of incidents of intimidation and violence, just kept going up. And this is before the war. But we're invited. Our presence is much appreciated. And so when the news came that the grant had been cut, and I know that it was extremely difficult for our staff who had to impart the news, it was really felt very seriously. The second quick vignette, 10 of Nations, Daoud, their mother as well, many of the members of the family were there for a communion service, and it wasn't in the outdoor olive grove, which the Church of Scotland had funded the creation of. It was in the cave that's been transformed into a place of meeting. And the wine we used had been made on the farm, and there were ecumenical accompaniers who had been placed in Bethlehem at that time, and they attended the service. And again, with tears, some of them, you know, an outpouring of emotion. It's a task that requires a lot of self-discipline. You observe, you're not allowed to intervene in any way. You write it up, so you revisit it, you come home, you're changed, looking for ways, you know, to report. And again, they feel the support of the Church of Scotland, and we really do need to find a way to reinstate the grant, if at all possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't see any other calls for comments, and I see no other questions. So I'll call on the convener.
We are happy to accept the new section and will gladly give prayerful consideration to this. Thank you.
Thank you. Convener is happy to accept. Is the Assembly happy to accept? And online. Thank you. And we're to section 12. Okay. We move to section 12 in the print. We have an amendment in the name of Susan Brown. I'll ask the clerk to read it.
Thank you, moderator. So, Susan is asking to delete speaking out against this rhetoric and substitute those words for this: challenging this rhetoric through advocacy, encounter, and practical initiatives.
Okay. And do you have a seconder? Thoughts?
Yes. Sorry. Susan Brown, 56.
I tried to teach my son how to make bread. So from kneading it, to letting it proof, to shaping it, to then getting it in the right form for cooking by telephone. This is not advisable, partly because the hand actions from yourself on the phone means that budgies, dogs, and everything go flying. But also, it's so much more difficult to understand what it is really, you're trying to say. My words, my addition to this, the amendment to this section, is simply to say that we need to say more than simply, don't say that. We need to offer another way of living and being that is more dignified to all of those who are around us in this world. And that is pure and simply what I'm after. Thank you.
Thank you. Convener, are you happy to accept the amendment? Would you like to speak to it? Absolutely.
Moderator, Emma Jackson, Convener of Public Life and Social Justice. Susan, thank you for your words and for bringing this amendment, which ultimately strengthen what we were endeavouring to do here, and we would like to accept. But I would be grateful to take the opportunity perhaps to say a few words just on a topic of such deep importance. The Church of Scotland has made it very clear in signed statements alongside Interfaith and our ecumenical partners our opposition to both the Illegal Migration Act and the Safety of Rwanda Bill. The Very Reverend Sally Foster Fulton wrote to MPs on the eve of the debate of the Rwanda Bill, urging them to reject this bill and to pursue alternatives. We have such grave concerns about the safety of asylum seekers who are being deported to Rwanda. The UK Parliament legislating that Rwanda is a safe place does not make it so. We are ashamed that the plan reneges on the UK's obligations under the 1951 Refugee Convention and breaches international law. We are deeply worried that the plan will result in the separation of families and communities and have lifelong consequences for some of the most vulnerable in our society, many of which have already been forced to endure unimaginable harm. These plans are inhumane and fail to recognise the inherent dignity and value of each and every person. There is a cloud of fear hanging over people right now in the asylum system as they become increasingly worried about detention and deportation, and it is starting to happen. Today, the BBC News reported the detention of Glasgow-based Asylum Alejandro, who came to the UK from Syria, where he had not only endured unimaginable torture, but witnessed the murder of his brother, both of which the Home Office acknowledge. He was detained and taken down south to England, and his brothers now have no longer any contact with him. This is an ever-increasingly hostile environment that asylum seekers, refugees face, and the language and rhetoric is all too often aggressive, dehumanising and divisive, robbing people of their dignity. And this is sadly all too present in the language of the press and indeed some of our politicians alike in certain quarters as they only seek to add heat to issues. There is a different way. The establishment of safe and legal routes to the UK is the primary thing that we would urge to happen. No one would willingly choose to cross dangerous seas and deal with human traffickers if there was an offer of safe travel available. Undoubtedly, SIM would have taken a legal and safe route available to join his family if that had been available to him. There are other things that could be done as well, lifting the ban on working so that asylum seekers could support themselves through employment and the reinstatement of the 0.7% aid commitment so the UK could take a leading role in addressing forces. But above and beyond all of this, we seek for the dignified and compassionate treatment of our brothers and sisters. Let us be a people of God who use our voice to pursue compassion and justice. So we thank you again, Susan. We want to accept your amendment, and we hope that we can accept this new amended deliverance as part of the report.
Thank you. Yeah. Is the Assembly... Well, let's make sure it's amended first. Assembly's happy to accept the amendment. And online. Okay. And I think we have then, we've got a question and 2 comments on 12 in the print. 12 as amended. So Stella Campbell has a question, and then Alistair Bruce and Stella Campbell has a comment. So I'll let Stella go first, and you can put them together, question, then comment.
Moderator, Campbell 354. We've been reminded during this General Assembly, God welcomes all. In March last year, I was invited with other community partners into a conversation regarding the standing up of an asylum seekers hotel in Westhill. The purpose of the meeting was to discern how the community would handle the arrival of 170 men seeking asylum. When the news broke in the community, the response was pretty negative. But as a community partnership, we determined that the best way to counter this was to tell a different story and to use different language. We began preparing welcome packs and gathering donations. I'm immensely proud of how our community and congregation have stepped up. Over the last 14 months, the work has developed in incredible ways. We've established a clothing bank in the hotel, a weekly conversation hub, and ESOL classes. With the turnover in the hotel, we have supported hundreds of men and are anticipating more arriving. We've encountered men whose stories cause your heart to break, and yet who are trying their best to integrate into a different culture and to learn a new language, Doric. Some of them are illiterate in their own language because of war and conflict. We've learned a great deal, from how to ensure equity when needs are many and varied, to how to manage integration when the population is transitory, to where to buy men's underwear in bulk. You can ask me later. I'm increasingly horrified by the inhumane nature of the system into which they are thrown. And I am sickened by the persistent dehumanizing and hostile rhetoric which is used to talk about these men. Language matters. These men are not faceless to us. They are not statistics. They are individuals. They have names, families, hopes, and dreams. And now they are men who live in fear of being deported to Rwanda, which is devastating for them and heart-wrenching for every volunteer who's determined to welcome them. Moderator, I would urge all of us and the wider church to think about how we can challenge the rhetoric that dehumanizes those whom we want to say to, you are welcome here with open arms.
Thank you. And Stella, did you have a question?
The convener has answered the question.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Alistair Bruce and then Brian Kerr.
Moderator, Alistair Bruce, 353. I'd like to support the comments of my friend Stella Campbell. Over the last few years, my church has in various ways supported and cared for a number of refugee families, and it has been our pleasure to do so. A couple of years ago, we were introduced to a young refugee who had been placed by Aberdeenshire Council with a family in our town. Being a Christian, he began attending our church soon after he arrived. He attended our Alpha course with his foster mum, as well as our new members course, and he helps in our Kirk Centre project when he's not working. And at his request, it was eventually my immense privilege to baptise him and invite him into membership of the Church of Scotland and our local congregation. More recently, he has found the courage to speak to our community and the Guild movingly and powerfully about his life and what led him to flee his home country and the harrowing journey he took that led him to Scotland. But recently, he has become increasingly frightened and concerned by the implications of the Rwanda bill. He himself has the security of a legal visa, but his concern is for his friends who are still waiting. And in an email he recently sent me through the family he stays with, he says this: detention centres are like prison, and you are treated like a criminal. You're handcuffed for transport. You can only take clothes with you. You can't take any money, mobile phones, or even belts, so phoning the Care for Cali helpline is not possible. You cannot say goodbye to friends. Friends are so important, and being separated from them is stressful. Once again, you don't know where you're going. My friends arrived in the UK around the same time as I did, and they were sticking to the rules while applying for visas and were working with their allocated lawyers. We all thought we were safe in the UK and would be protected by human rights. We don't think Rwanda will be safe for us
and we are afraid. And last night I received a text from his foster mum saying that yesterday they were drawn to the scripture of Leviticus chapter 19, which says, "When a foreigner resides among you in your land, do not ill-treat them. The foreigner residing among you must be treated as your native born. Love them as yourself, for you were foreigners in Egypt. I am the Lord your God." Moderator, I welcome the action and what you've proposed. Thank you.
Thank you. Brian Kerr.
Moderator Kerr, 227. I just wanted to speak in support of this. Moderator, you and I and a small group in March visited Dungavel Detention Centre as part of your visit to Forth Valley and Clydesdale. And in fact, our current moderator, Shaw, his parish encompasses that area. I didn't know much about Dungavel until I walked through the gates. I didn't know much other than we all had a conversation about how we did not want to go. We would much rather have been on the other side of the fence, being lifted for saying not in our name. But going in gave us the opportunity to speak with staff who were trying their best to care for those who were detained and in their care. Staff who we saw going above and beyond, trying to make that place as supportive as possible, with video calls home and to lawyers. It was something interesting. Until that is, we started to see the real scenario. And I'm not saying that that's about anything the staff are doing, but then we started to talk to some of the people who stayed there. And the moderator managed to have a conversation with someone, and within seconds we understood that all was not as being painted by those who managed. It is a grim, grim place. It's a horrible place to be. It's surrounded by people who are frightened and sad and not understanding where they might be in just a few days' time. But yet, we met with them and talked, and we worshipped, and we read scripture together, and we prayed, and we got to know some of them, just that little bit. Hearing some stories. I don't think there were any of us there during that service or that visit that didn't cry. It was an awful place to be, and yet at the same time, the place we needed to be. The people who were there and being detained appreciated our visit, appreciated the work of those who have been providing services and chaplaincy, and John Carswell from our presbytery is trying to do just that. And getting to know people, hearing their story, and understanding their fear and pain is so important. Journeying alongside as brothers and sisters and families who we share a common bond with. We didn't see staff or anyone using language or rhetoric that we would have found painful. But that was the experience of those who were there. They understand some of the words, and they understand it is painful for them. But we've got to remember as well, there are staff in these detention centres who are working within a system that they cannot change either. So for us to call this out and to say no more to our government and the policymakers is exactly where we need to be in this debate. Moderator, thank you for your visit, and thank you for spending time in Dungavel with us.
Thank you. Thank you. So we move to section 12. Is the Assembly happy to accept? And online. Thank you. We have a new section 13 now in the name of... Just bear with us for a second.
Ian Alexander.
All right. So we have a new section 13 in the name of Ian Alexander. Okay. No, in the name of Miriam Wyby.
Well, there's two.
Okay.
No,
Well,
so it is Ian Alexander, please. Sorry.
is this Ian?
Oh, for goodness sake.
Okay. So we have
Miriam, bless you, my lovely. You come
Okay,
back.
this is Ian.
Oh, that's Ian.
Keeps moving.
Or maybe it's... Is this definitely water?
I think so. Sadly, it is, yes.
Thank you, Tommy.
New section 13, in the name of Ian Alexander, I will ask the principal clerk to read it.
Right. Okay, new section 13. Give thanks for a century of faithful witness and service in the National Council of Churches of Korea and commit to continuing accompaniment for the campaign for peace and reconciliation on the Korean Peninsula.
Okay.
Alexander 1.
And you have a seconder.
I don't know, I'm hoping.
Oh, seconded, okay.
This was as instructed by the substantive moderator the other day when he responded to the Reverend Dr. Sung-Yuk Park, who asked for something to come forward, and I was instructed to go and work with Dr. Park to bring something forward in this 100th anniversary year of the National Council of Churches in Korea, which has a distinguished heritage of ecumenical witness and action against the dictatorship and militarism, and working for peace, care for creation, and human rights for all. Jerry Pillay, the WCC General Secretary, recently said, "This heritage is an inspiration for the wider global movement, ecumenical movement, and a resource from which we can all draw for the challenges we face." The Church of Scotland has been an active participant in the National Council of Churches Ecumenical Forum for Peace, Reconciliation and Development on the Korean Peninsula, as Dr. Park said, and previous General Assemblies have commended this work. So I thought in this 100th anniversary year, it would be good to present this deliverance for the General Assembly. So thank you, Moderator.
Thank you. Thank you, Ian. Is the convener happy to accept? Thank you. Is the Assembly happy to accept? And online, thank you. And now we have another new section 13 in the name of Miriam Wyby, and I will ask the clerk to read it.
Thank you very much, Moderator. Recognise and give thanks for Mediterranean Hope's ministry of 10 years in welcoming and supporting refugees and migrants, and commend their continued efforts to identify and develop models of best practice where can be shared.
And do we have a seconder? Wonderful, thank you. Miriam.
Thank you, Moderator. Miriam Wyby, number 47. Moderator, in November of last year, I visited Rome at the same time as you during your moderatorial year, and you were gracious enough to invite me to join with the Church of Scotland group for some of the meetings and activities. I am thankful for that kind invitation and for your willingness to second this motion, had you not been in the chair right now. In Rome, we had poignant conversations about the terrible risks that refugees and migrants face in the Mediterranean Sea, and the all too frequent hostile responses from many governments. Sometimes it seems like these stories have dropped from our media, but as we all know, people are still dying as they strive to reach safe shores. The ecumenical project Mediterranean Hope, supported by the Church of Scotland, is still at work, receiving and welcoming people landing in Europe and encouraging ways of safe passage. The original reason for my travel to Rome was to attend the introduction of our new Church of Scotland minister, the Reverend Tara Kerr-Lewis. As she is someone working much more closely with Mediterranean Hope than I am, I wonder whether Tara might make comment at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. We have two notices on my screen, so Tara Kerr-Lewis and then Jay Johnston. Peter. So I'll ask, I'll ask Tara and then Peter, please.
Lewis 600, I would walk 600 miles and 600 more to share the news of Mediterranean hope. I appreciate the report from the Faith and Action people. I appreciate the recent conversation in the resolution just before this one about safe passages and the yearning for safe passages to the UK. The concerns that the Church of Scotland has also for people who are marginalised and especially asylum seekers and refugees. I also appreciate that earlier in this assembly you recognised the birth of the Valdensian Church with its history of displacement and at times forced migration of the Valdensian faithful. The Valdensian Church was a founding member of the Federation of Protestant Churches in Italy in 1967. And the Federation established Mediterranean Hope, a program to serve people on the move and the communities that host them. This year, Mediterranean Hope celebrates 10 years. The Church of Scotland, as Miriam has indicated, supports this program particularly through the work of Fiona Kendall, a mission partner who works in the areas of legal and advocacy roles with leaders of multiple countries, and this program continues to be supported by the Valdensian Church, the Methodist Church in the UK, Global Ministries of the United Church of Christ, and the Disciples of Christ in the US. I have been inspired that this ministry began as a result of the shipwreck on the 3rd of October in 2013, when a few miles from the island of Lampedusa, 368 people died trying to reach Italy through the Mediterranean Sea. Today, the breadth of the work that Mediterranean Hope conducts has teams in Lampedusa and Sicily, receiving and welcoming people who arrive, having either secured a place in the Safe Passage program or securing a passage on a leaky boat run by Tunisian people smugglers. In Sicily, there's also the House of Many Cultures, where staff assist residents on a pathway to the residents who are refugees on a pathway to autonomy through psychosocial support, language learning, cultural orientation, legal assistance, education, as well as support in attaining meaningful work. The centre is a hub not only for residents, but for the local community who both use its services and act as volunteers. It is a place where dreams can be realised. Mediterranean Hope is committed to developing new and repeatable models of best practice. One such aspect of their work has been the development of the humanitarian corridors. This is an ecumenical initiative with the San Egidio community. It enables people to come to Italy through safe passage corridors. It includes elements that supports a visa, pre-departure orientation, and a full package of support geared to them having autonomy within 18 months. The humanitarian corridors have hubs in Lebanon, Pakistan, and Iran. At this time, with the migration debate being so polarised, the ecumenical support of the churches for Mediterranean Hope is making a real difference in the lives of people who have hopes and dreams of a safe place to live. The team of Mediterranean Hope will be greatly encouraged by this deliverance, should it pass, of the Assembly. Thank you.
Thank you. And Peter Johnson.
Johnson, 361.
Thank you.
Moderator, yes, I'd like to speak in favour of this. In the Presbytery of the North East and the Northern Isles, we had the benefit of Fiona Kendall coming to visit us just recently and going around the spread wide across the Presbytery, engaging with congregations and communities about the work of Mediterranean Hope, and wonderful to hear about that from the previous speaker. And I would commend the work of Mediterranean Hope. Talk about it within your own congregations, what is happening there as a model for what we can be doing and conversations that we can be having for our own government. We were privileged in my own congregation where Fiona was speaking to have some refugees from Syria and Iran who were part of the group that had come that night, and hearing their stories and their journeys and about the work that can be done to help them was deeply moving. And so I commend this section, moderator. Thank you.
Thank you. Convener, are you happy to accept? Assembly, are you happy to accept this new section? And online. Thank you. And online, so it passes. Okay, we move then to section 13 in the print. Okay. And online? I'm remembering for a change. And section 14 in the print. Okay, we've got 2 comments, Tim Norwood and Sheena Orr. So Tim and then Sheena.
Thank you. When I put in to speak, I didn't realize how immediate this would be. But of course, it's very timely. We've been working together under the banner of Churches Together in Britain and Ireland over the last few months to prepare for what we knew would be a general election year. And so I would really like to commend to the General Assembly. Unfortunately, we are relatively few in number now at the end of the day, but I hope this message can get through to the wider Kirk. Very much like to commend to the General Assembly the resources being produced by Churches Together in Britain and Ireland, and in particular, the material encouraging the holding of ecumenical hustings, ecumenical opportunities to meet with our politicians, because this is a really key time both to have our voices heard and to build relationships with members of Parliament for the coming years. But also, of course, the voter registration champions scheme, which addresses the issues around voter registration and ID. People will be aware that because of changes in rules, a huge number of people will be impacted by the need to have voter ID and to register in a new way. I carried out one of the pilots for this scheme a few weeks ago in a congregation of around 80 people, and I was surprised to find that 11 of those 80 people had not, at that point, registered to vote and were able to do so. So I really encourage you to do this, because the people who are most affected are the young people, the older people, marginalized groups, people from deprived backgrounds, immigrant populations. So this is something that I would really commend that the Kirk takes seriously at this time. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Sheena Orr has withdrawn, so there are no more questions or comments. I'll hand over to the convener.
Moderator, Emma Jackson, convener of Public Life and Social Justice. As followers of Jesus, one of the biggest calls on our lives is to live out the Great Commission and the Great Command, to love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and to love your neighbour as yourself. At its heart, politics is all about improving the structures and systems in our society that we should all benefit from, that our neighbour should benefit from. Our neighbour who might face more complex or more challenging circumstances than perhaps we face ourselves. We get the chance to choose who we think might be best at delivering these through voting, and exercising our right to vote is a very real way that we can show love for our neighbour. When I was preparing these remarks last night, I had absolutely no idea that when I would get up to speak today, we would know that we are about to have a general election on the 4th of July. So this feels also more powerful and important for us to be reflecting on today. and the opportunity that the local church has in a very real way to get involved in encouraging and supporting people to exercise their democratic right to vote. The Church of Scotland has joined with other denominations and faiths in partnering with Citizens UK to encourage congregations to get election ready and to take part in what's going to be happening. This includes creating voter registration campaigns to help people to register to vote and to have the right ID, as Tim just mentioned to us. This election will be the first time for us here in Scotland where photographic ID is required. We saw it happen for our friends down south in England in the local council elections, though I think a few famous folk forgot to bring their ID with them. We know that photographic ID is a key barrier to certain communities being able to exercise their right to vote, disabled people, those from Black and minority ethnic communities, and those on a low income. And then there is very real concern that these groups will become disenfranchised. Local churches have such an incredible opportunity to help people in their local community to get ready, to have the right ID, to be registered, and to actually support and help people to vote. There is no suggestion whatsoever that any of this has any impact on how people vote. That is entirely each and every person's free choice. We've spoken about a number of issues of justice over this assembly. The general election presents churches with the opportunity to discuss these with prospective candidates, to ask questions, to work ecumenically with other churches in their local area to maybe hold a hustings, and that's a great way to do that. Or equally, after the elections, hold a meet your new MP session, gather people together in your community to have the chance to meet with that person and have conversations, influence their priorities as they start their term of office. And finally, churches and all of us, we have the opportunity to pray into this. Our elected representatives and candidates for elections face an ever-increasingly difficult environment to do their job. Conversations that take place online can be toxic and abusive. And in particular, the sexism, misogyny, and violence that our female elected representatives face is abhorrent. This forces many to leave and puts many others off from taking part. So let us please pray for all of our existing elected representatives and for all of our prospective candidates. Let's thank them for their service and let them know that your church wants to work with them to deliver the compassion and justice that our communities deserve.
Thank you. Thank you. Section 14, Assembly. And online. Excellent. There is a new section 15 in the name of Christine Murdoch, and I would ask the Principal Clerk to read that for us, please.
Thank you, Moderator. The new section 15 is, as the UK general election will take place during the Scottish school holidays, encourage those who will be on holiday to register for a postal vote.
Thank you. Hand over. And do we have a seconder?
Thank you.
Nice.
Murdoch 148. Thank you, Moderator. While women over the age of 30 were granted the vote in 1918, it is less than 100 years since women received the vote on the same basis as men. As the general election will be held during the majority of the school holidays, to ensure that people will not be disenfranchised in this general election, I would ask the General Assembly to urge anyone who will be away from home on the 4th of July to register for a postal vote. Thank you, Moderator.
Thank you very much. I don't see any questions or follow-on comments. Any response from the... Happy to accept. Assembly, are you happy to accept? And online. Wonderful. That's it. Well,
Supplementary report tomorrow.
The supplementary report will be tomorrow, but we go now to the deliverance as a whole. No, we don't. Oh, we don't. We're doing. You're getting to leave, though. That's the beauty of it. You're getting to go. You're getting to go.
May I make an announcement about it?
Yes, of course you may.
Before the moderator allows us to leave the room, might I let commissioners know that there's been a leak in the black and white corridor, that heavy rain has arrived. There are buckets out, but we would just urge caution in your step, that you don't slip and fall.
Okay. Before you go, can I just say, well done. Well done. Saints of God, enjoy your evening. Come back refreshed. Thank you all so very much for hanging in there and for your service. Let's have a quick prayer and then off we go. Thank you, God, for each other. Thank you for a spirit of restlessness and determination and care. Let it fire something in us that will not let go. Amen. Amen. Amen.